Welcome to Talking Halos. This is Derek Ciapola with my co-host, my partner in crime, Jared Tims, for another edition of the show. And we are here talking about this morning's news. Mike Trout announcing that he's moving to right field, which is what we've been talking about forever and a day. He finally makes that decision. Jared, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing fantastic. Great Monday morning. We had baseball all weekend with college baseball. It was a lot of fun. So yeah,
Did you see that one crazy baseball score that run with 36-22?
yeah. There's D3 school. Yeah, it's crazy. A lot of crazy scores. I think a D1 team won 35-1. Indiana State, I think, won. So yeah,
My
crazy
gosh.
crazy weekend.
Crazy weekend, and it's not even March yet. So, talking about crazy. For years now, I've been pondering Mike Trout moving out of center field. Not a whole lot of talk outside the fan base. Like you never really heard anybody else talking about other than the fans. We've all kind of been like, hey, he should move out of center field. And the question was always, would he do it? Would he be willing to do it? We always get the feeling that he wouldn't be willing to do it. And then surprise, surprise, Monday morning news break, Mike Trout announces he's moving to right field permanently. Uh, how do you feel about it?
Um, I'm good with it. We've been saying it for a while. Like I think it's going to help Trout in the long run. I think it makes him more valuable. Just because when you look at Trout's numbers in center field, he was never a great defensive center fielder. He was always a defensive center field, like a not a defensive, but he was always a center fielder, but he was never great in that position. Um, all his value came from offense, which is fantastic, and it made him one of the best players the in baseball. So the big question is, at the end of the day, does it actually take does it help him stay healthy? And I mean, I know center field is a slightly more demanding position, but in right field, you're still standing out there for 162 games, whatever it is. You still have a DH in Jorge Soler, who, I mean, maybe he plays 20 to 40 games in right field for Trout. I guess that's probably the swap that we see. When Trout is DHing, Soler is probably in the outfield, and Soler is not a good defensive outfielder, anyways. Um, both their value come from the offensive side of things. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy about it. I think it's kind of seemed weird. I was listening to Trout's press conference this morning about it, and he kind of seemed, I don't want to say annoyed, but he didn't seem all that like happy about it. As weird as that sounds, he kind of just seemed, yeah, annoyed, I think is the right word for it. Short, quick answers could have been, the questions he was getting asked to. But at the end of the day, does it keep Trout healthy? Does it keep Trout on the field for 130, 140, 150 games, 2020 in 2025 and beyond, and maybe bring him back out of that King Griffey Jr. category? Because I mean, you look at their careers up until now for Trout and Griffey, and they are very, very similar careers. And I would, you categorize Ken Griffey as one of the greatest to ever play the game, and he probably could have been the greatest to ever play the game, a little bit more in your era than my era. But I mean, you look at those two players, and Griffey was decimated by injuries, and Trout right now has been decimated by injuries. I mean, he could have 500 plus home runs, and he's just entering his age 32 season. So, yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's a good thing. You hear my hesitation, because center field's a tough spot to find somebody to play, and I know we're going to talk about that here in a second, maybe a replacement for Trout in center field, but at the end of the day, I think it's a good thing for Trout.
I go back and forth on it. Mostly because the injuries he's had really haven't taken place in the field. Everything ranging from the hamate to the torn meniscus. That's all, those happened in the process of being at the plate or running the bases. They didn't happen out in the field. So I'm pondering whether or not that even has any effect whatsoever on whether or not he stays healthy. So, I look at that and is it really worth upsetting him? Because that's really what it is. He's at this press conference and he's doing something for the team that he doesn't really want to do. That's my view of it. He doesn't really want to move out of center field. He has to learn an all new position for him in his age 32 year. It's not something you want to do. You want to you want to be in your home position. So that's my read on why he's annoyed. And I'm sure there are a couple of dumb questions coming from people we won't name. They who shall not be named. Okay, so I look at it that way.
You did feel that way. You watched
Yeah,
like
yeah.
little
I
clips.
mean, I agree with you. Like,
It seemed like that, right? Like
but
just
it's
an
to me, it's
air.
common sense though. Like,
Yeah.
he doesn't really want to move. He's probably doing it because the team is pushing to him to, and because he probably doesn't at the root know it's something that makes sense. Like, doesn't mean he wants to do it. He's human like everybody else. He wants to be in his home position, but it's what's best for the team. So you do it. But in the same token, I go back to my original point. Is it really going to keep him healthy? I don't know. All these other injuries he's had, I can't think of any injury he's had since 2019. Correct me if I'm wrong, because there's been so many of them that took place while he was actually playing the field.
The only one that I can think of in his career is when he dove and I think he sprained his wrist in center field. But I mean, other than that, like I just don't I really can't think of one in center field. But again, center field's a much more demanding position than right field. And center field at Angel Stadium, I've proposed this for a long time. If you're standing in the center field bleachers, or if you have the opportunity to stand in center field where Mike Trout plays, and you look at the backdrop, that's a it's not easy to pick up the ball off the bat. And I've thrown this out there and I've gotten like half answers from players about playing center field in Anaheim, and it's not easy to pick up the ball in center field and at Angel Stadium. So yeah, I know that doesn't have anything to do with injuries or anything like that, but center field, a much more demanding position. You know, you have to be running both ways. Not that you don't have to do that in right field. People are questioning Trout's arm in right field. I think that's a completely like old school approach at a position. Like you need to have a good arm to play right field, just like Vlad had, or just like every other right fielder has had. Like I don't know. I mean, sure you should probably have a good arm in any position in the outfield, let alone just right field. But yeah, I mean, I can't think of any injuries off the top of my head that have happened in center field, other than maybe last year in his rehab stint in Salt Lake when he played like 2 innings and got hurt or came out because of knee soreness and then didn't play the rest of the season. I don't know if that happened in center field in Salt Lake or if that happened when he was running, but
When he was
regardless,
running.
at the end of the day, we'll kind of see what happens. I don't know.
We'll see what happens. The jury's out, but eventually the Angels we're going to have to try and figure something out anyway. So I'm glad he did it. I'm glad he made that choice. Although I'm not sure how much of a choice it was for him. I think it's probably the club pushed for it. He didn't want to do it. Decided it was probably best for the team. Still doesn't want to do it, but he's going to do it because best for the team. That's
I,
kind of how I viewed it.
I'll say this too. I think if Ron Washington says something and you hear it out of Ron Washington's mouth rather than Perry Minasian's mouth, I think it's a little bit different. I think not that Perry Minasian isn't respected by any means, but you look at a guy like Ron Washington who's been around the game for 50 years now. And you know, I think if it came out of Ron Washington's mouth, it's a lot easier to swallow than Perry Minasian and the analytics department and saying like, hey, the numbers this, the numbers that. Like it's the Moneyball thing, right? Like if it came out of what Jonah Hill's mouth instead of, actual baseball, mind's mouth. So
Yeah.
I think that I hope it came out of Ron's mouth. I don't know if we'll ever know that or not, but hearing it come from Ron Washington rather than a stats guy, the GM, somebody who's never done it before, probably helps out the player side of stuff too, and helps out that relationship a little bit more than just being like, hey, this is coming from Perry, and we're going to move you off the position.
So what's this mean for center field now for the Angels? He's going to right. We know who's in left. It's already been talked about. Taylor Ward's in left. So that leaves Mickey Moniak, Joe Adell. Anybody else we're thinking of here?
Um, I, Bryce Teodosio, Nelson Rada. I'll throw Nelson Rada's name out there because I think that he is just as productive as any other center fielder the Angels have right now.
Okay, well, who wins this?
Um, if and I'm getting torn up on X about it today. If it's for me, if it's me, it's Mickey Moniak's job to lose at the moment. Only because Moniak has played that position. He's played it at a Gold Glove caliber. He's been a very good defensive outfielder. And you look at the season where he was good in 2023, and I mean, he was very, very good offensively as well. I think he had a 115 WRC plus. Last year, not so much, but he played the majority of the time there. I think he played 101 games in center field last year, where Joe Adell played 5 games in center field. Not saying that Joe Adell can't do it. I just, for me right now, I think it's Mickey Moniak's position to lose. Now, if Joe Adell comes out there in spring and hits 400 with 10 tanks and plays very good defensively, then absolutely hand it to Joe Adell. I don't like the argument that just because Joe Adell was a Gold Glove caliber right fielder, it automatically translate to center field because of what I said, a couple minutes ago. Center field is a very difficult, it's a very different position to play, especially at Angel Stadium with the backdrop behind home plate. It's not easy to pick up a ball, and we know Joe Adell's defensive woes in the past. I'm not going to hold that against him by any means because he is a different player now, but I just think that Mickey Moniak is a better choice at center field. I think they end up platooning at the end of the day. I think that we see 100 games out of Moniak, good chunky games out of Joe Adell. I think Trout plays a little bit of center field as well. Whoever's the hot hand at the time. But if we're talking opening day right now, I think it's Mickey Moniak.
I think when we're talking about it's incredibly important to point this out because Joe Adell has so many detractors. Yeah, he had some bonehead plays last year, both offensively and defensively. But when you look at the overall numbers, he was a very good defensive center field, right fielder last year. And people don't really see that. The guy has improved dramatically out there about time. You look at Moniak, though, and this is where it's hard for me to. Usually I can. Usually I'm very good at separating the baseball objective mind from the fan. The fan in me wants to see Moniak just take the job and be out there 130, 140 games minimum. They went and traded for him years ago, a former number one pick. He came in and he did a really good job in 2023. And all of a sudden last year he comes in and they just never really gave an opportunity to be a full-time guy. He was constantly platooning here, platooning there. And if that's the case, you don't really know what you have. Like you don't if he's not your full-time guy, it's hard for you to be consistent at the plate. It's hard for you to be consistent in the field. You really want to I think you want to give him the opportunity to prove that he is who many believed he could be years ago. And I don't believe he's gotten that opportunity yet. So I want to see him out there full time. I want to see him out there playing that many games just to see what. And I'm being consistent, Jared. I've talked about this numerous times. I want to see what these guys got. Well, if you're not going to play them, how do you know what you got? But then here's the conundrum there. They've already named Taylor Ward as the full-time guy in left field. You know Mike Trout's going to right field. He'll probably play 20 games or so at DH. What about Joe Adell? Because you need to see what he's got too. And that's the conundrum I see. What do you think?
I think it becomes even more of a conundrum because I think that they still might pick up another outfielder on the free agent market or via trade. Like I think it becomes very, very weird. But yes, I don't disagree with you. Like I want to know Moniak got like exiled last year for some strange reason. I still don't know why or how that happened. Adell got a lot of the playtime there and right, and he absolutely deserved it. For me, I think it's a tale of Angels fans being okay with kind of mediocrity in a sense. I mean, we're talking about two guys who last year Adell was a 207 hitter who had a 90 WRC plus, 15 doubles, 3 triples, and 20 home runs. Like that's a below average offensive player who played well in right field. Those guys are kind of dime a dozen guys. Like you might not be able to find a 20 home run hitter, but you can find a guy who's going to play, average to above average defense and have a 90 WRC plus that, Willie Calhoun type guy, and Mickey Moniak last year, not much better. He was a 219 hitter at a 79 WRC plus, 17 doubles, 2 triples and 14 home runs. So it's like, I understand the arguments here for both of them, and I understand that they both probably deserve to get a shot. But we're talking about such mediocrity. I feel like Angels fans are just so used to the mediocrity that we have to argue about players that are 80, 90 WRC plus guys instead of having. I mean, it would be a lot. better of an argument if we were talking about two Taylor Wards playing center field, guys that were 120 WRC plus guys that are going to be good offensively. So not to, shut down this argument because this is going to be a discussion that we have all spring. It's like who's the opening day center fielder and I don't know if there is going to be one that gets announced, but I just feel like as Angels fans, like just everybody's so used to the mediocrity of bad baseball that we're arguing about two guys that, might at some point be okay in center field. Like I feel like this is it's weird and I know I'm kind of being a little bit of a negative Nate here on this, but it's really true. Like we're arguing about such mediocrity. It's fun though to talk about this, but it's very tough. And I've kind of like thrown this around a couple times. Like man, like Adell was good last year. He was well improved, but he still was a below average hitter that played good defense in right field. And Moniak, a below average hitter that plays good defense. Like those guys are dime a dozen guys. Like no, I brought up Nelson Rada. Like Nelson Rada could do that in a heartbeat. He could be a 70 WRC plus guy who plays like gold glove caliber defense in center field. Why not bring him like why not bring that guy up? Like what is yeah, Adell could hit 35 home runs if he played 162 games, but I don't know. Am I ranting here? Am I going off on a weird tangent?
You are, but I want to push back a little bit. I want to push back a little bit before we do. Here's a word for our sponsors from our sponsors for our audio listeners. All right, so here's the thing. You're talking about these guys being mediocre, and so I'm not thinking like that. I'm not thinking that way at all. I'm thinking baseball is very much a timing, a momentum kind of game. Okay, you have your ups and downs throughout the year, so on and so forth. When you're a regular everyday player and you play 140, 150, 160 games, you have a chance to work yourself in and out of slumps. You have a chance to kind of figure things out. And there's a rhythm to it, right? You're not going to hit, most players aren't going to hit a straight, consistent 300 all year long, so on and so forth. They're going to have your 400 months, you're going to have your 200 months. For a guy like a Moniak or an Adell for that matter, and they really haven't had a chance at the major league level to work themselves out of that. They just get sat. And so we're talking about mediocrity, and you're right, those are mediocre numbers, but we've never seen if they're able to dig their way out of those mediocre numbers as a regular everyday player. And that's what this has all been. This is what the season's about for me. Can the Angels develop these guys, keep them in-house, and build on this roster, or is it time to get other people in there? And you're never going to really know what these guys are capable of if you don't play them.
Yeah.
Moniak's a great example of that. We saw evidence of it in 2023 when he got the chance to be regular, and he was very good for much of the year offensively. And you come into 2024, and the moment he has a few struggles, you just bench him. You don't play him a whole lot. You play him inconsistently. You just give up. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And maybe that 2023 year was just a flash in the pan. But we don't know that because you're not giving him the opportunity to see what he's got in an Angels uniform in that ballpark regularly. The same for Joe, Adell. It seems like they jerk him around too. They get an opportunity. So, and that's the conflict. I want to see both these guys get their opportunities, but right now it looks like only one can, unless you're going to platoon them, and then that takes you back to the same place you were last year. This has nothing to do about being mediocre. I want to see if they can move beyond being mediocre. That's what it's always been for me for this year is can these players who were once great prospects finally live up to their pedigree and be something, or is it time to move on? And that's what we need to know.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this: Joe Adell played 130 games last year, so that's a pretty good chunk there. I was looking at Moniak's 2023 when he kind of went off, had the almost two WAR, and he played 85 games. So I'll say this: I mean, you definitely want to see Moniak get another shot. I think Adell had a shot last year, and we saw good improvement. This is a big year for him this year, depending on where he plays and if he gets full time. I mean, we just mentioned it. I mean, what if he's platooning in center field with Moniak, and then no questions get answered? Like I do agree with you on that. I would love some answers, especially heading into the 2026 season when I think that's when the Angels window opens to start really winning some baseball games.
Now, the thing with Moniak in 2023 though, he played those 85 games pretty well, close to regular.
Yeah, yeah. I
Was
think he finished off the season pretty regular.
okay, and then same for but Adell. Even last year, Adell moved around a lot last year. I want to see guys sit in their position, play their position, and play regularly
Yeah. I mean, you have to
to see
remember.
what they do.
I think Adele missed the last what month of the season.
Yeah,
So
so like he played, but they moved him around a bit too. I mean, they Ron Washington is the one. I still believe this team will be better this year just because Ron Washington's a good manager. Last year's it's a train wreck all around the board. There's no way you can escape it. But he's a good manager, and I think they'll adjust better this year. A lot of the distractions are gone. Shohei's completely out of the picture now. You still kind of had his shadow last year, but what do you really say when what can you really say as an organization when you bring guys in to give it an opportunity and you don't give them the full opportunity? And that's what I want to see them do.
yep, I agree. I mean, I feel like it's happened years on years on years now, where it's like, man, I want to know what Joe Adell is. I want to know what these guys are. And again, it kind of feels like that at the beginning of the season. I know Nate's talked about it a lot. Like, man, if you really want to let the kids play, why is Anderson here still here? Why'd you bring in Henderson? Why is he in the rotation? This, that, and another. So yeah, I get it. I do understand where everybody's coming from, and I'm the biggest believer in Joe Adell. I mean, we talked to him last offseason, and it was like, Joe, you're gonna have a big year, and I mean, we saw dramatic improvements in his defense and offensive side of the game as well. So yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, we're we're arguing here a little bit about potatoes and potatoes, tomatoes and tomatoes, but I want to know again for the 2026 season what the Angels have, especially going into the offseason. I don't want to be questioning things like, well, I
Sure.
mean, Adell didn't get a chance. Well, Moniak didn't get a chance. So they need a center fielder, or can one of those guys play there? And we at least we got an answer with Trout. At least we
Hmm.
that's one good thing. We know Trout is in right field moving forward, and hopefully it keeps him healthy.
Well, flip it around though. Okay, when you look at overall potential right now between Moniak and Adele, which of them has the higher ceiling?
I think that Moniak is a better defender. Um, and I don't think that Joe Adell is a center fielder. I don't. At the end of the day, I think Joe Adell's a corner outfielder. So do I think Joe Adell could be the left field replacement? Absolutely. Like I think that might be a good answer. And I think Moniak in center field is a good answer. Do I think Joe Adell has a higher upside though. I do at the end of the day. I think he's got
Yeah, that's
35 plus home run upside, but to find the defense that I think Joe Adell's a step ahead. I think you're going to start comparing Moniak to Nelson Arata pretty soon. As weird as that sounds, I think that those guys are pretty similar players. And who has higher upside between Moniak and Nelson Arata?
well, and I think you're looking at well with what about Taylor Ward?
Yeah, no,
Well,
that's mhm.
as we get close to the trade deadline, and we know this team isn't, you mentioned get the 500. I believe they're a 70-ish, 75-ish win baseball team this year, which is not, by the way, a criticism I think you're building. I'm not mad. Don't be mad at me. Um, that also means trade deadline stuff. And will Taylor Ward still be here after the trade deadline? If he comes out this year and is very solid heading into the trade deadline, I think he's getting traded. And then all of a sudden, that this whole question gets answered because now you're going to slot probably Joe Adell in the left field. So, it might just be a case of potato, potato. That's where we're at. All right. Any closing thoughts?
A lot of baseball, which is fun. I got nothing negative. I mean, want me to channel my inner Nate and be like, "Hey, Jose Suarez"? I don't know.
Oh, don't do that. Like we had a pretty good show on this today. Nice little, this Jose. He's still an angel though. Like how
Nate,
is this even
Nate,
possible? But
Nate will be back tomorrow for everybody that's dying for Nate. He'll be back
how
tomorrow.
about this? Do us a favor. Send us an email or get us on Twitter and send us your most negative take. The most outrageously negative take. We'll have Jarrett read it on the air, or better yet, we'll have Nate read it on the air.
Yeah, drop in the YouTube comments. That's good.
YouTube comments. There you go. Drop it in YouTube. All right. For Jared, myself, we'll see you for our next recording tomorrow night. Have a great one.